Welcome everybody to another book reading of Lord Meher, Jai Baba. I invite everybody today to join in, and those are listening to the recording, thank you for joining in. We're going to be reading from page number 1872, and Eugene, I think you can start reading, yeah, and then maybe whoever else comes next can continue. I'll be sharing screen now.
Baba tried to give Sieber the opportunity of being with his group, which, as Chanji noted, is a special privilege granted to very, very few select ones. But Sieber never did fit in. Baba had long talks with him, but it all had little effect on Sieber's mind. Baba remarked about him, he is like an empty vessel which keeps throwing out whatever is placed in it. Even after leaving Khan, Sieber continued to question Baba's ways of working in subsequent letter after letter. On 3 October 1937, another German came quite unexpectedly. His name was Joseph Sommerer of Munich. Sommerer held a doctorate in philosophy and had only heard of Baba 3 or 4 weeks before. He contacted Walter Mertens in Zurich, and when Sommerer learned that Baba was at Cannes, he immediately went there. Baba received him lovingly and permitted him to remain with the others for 3 days. Sommerer was deeply touched and felt that Baba had internally called him to Cannes. Padri's mother, Franey Masi, formerly lived in Pune and was closely Could you scroll, please, Mona? Thank you. Padri's mother, Franey Masi, formerly lived in Pune and was closely associated with Babajan and would visit her daily. After Babajan passed away in 1931, Franey Masi moved to Mehrabad and lived a semi-cloistered life with her sister, Daulat Mai, who was observing silence. Both were residing together in the family quarters. Oh, Mona, you lost your audio, so we'll have to skip that note. On 28 September, a telegram from Padri, I scrolled a bit too much. On 28 September, a telegram from Padri was received. Quote, "Mother lingering hopelessly, release her." End quote. Baba cabled back. "Tell Dowlat Mai that Franey Masi not suffering, but coming to me." The following day, another telegram was received from Padri conveying that Franey Masi had died. Baba commented, "She is freed." In accordance with Zoroastrian tradition, her body was taken to the Tower of Silence in Ahmednagar. She was 62 years old. Baba held a meeting on Wednesday, 29 September 1937, with Norina, Elizabeth, Nani, Ruano, and Kitty to discuss their stay in Cannes. The expenditure thus far incurred, and generally to review the accounts. Baba commented, "My stay here depends on financial adjustments. Otherwise, it is better for me to return to India. I would like to stay longer, but it is not good if our finances do not permit it." Money that was expected from Garrett Fort had not been received, and Fort was unable to come to Cannes himself due to lack of funds. From the end of August 1937, correspondence had been exchanged with certain men Mandali in India about bringing Muhammad Must from Mehrabad to Cannes. Adi Sr. and Baidul had been cabled to bring him, and their imminent arrival gave Baba's Western lovers the impression that Baba would definitely be staying in Cannes for a considerable length of time. Baba himself placed great importance on the Must's arrival and remarked, "If Muhammad does not come, I will send everyone back and return to India." Gabriel Pascal came to Cannes to see Baba on 30 September. Pascal said, "I was surrounded by difficulties on all sides, but since meeting you, I have experienced your inner help and found that my difficulties are slowly disappearing. I feel things have adjusted themselves so that I am now in a position to produce great motion pictures. And it is all due to your inner help." Pascal and Alexander Markey, who also visited the same day, loved Baba, and though they never did produce a film about him as planned, they remained steadfast in their love. On 7 October 1937, during Donkin's interview with Baba, Baba told him, "Try to be happy under all conditions. There is nothing but bliss. It is everywhere. Love divine. Misery exists in the minds of priests who preach heaven and hell. In reality, there is no hell. No God ever created hell. And to hell with the God who creates hell. Could you scroll a bit more? Thank you. Gita returned to Khan on the 7th, and Kitty's younger sister, Angela Lambert, who had first met Baba in Harmon in 1931, arrived from London the next day. Gita had a long talk with Baba on the 8th about the work she had done for him in Italy. Despite trying her best to publicize Baba's name there, as he had instructed, a ban was in force against publishing anything about God, religion, or spirituality. Gita felt bad about this, but Baba explained, I like Italy, which has always been a spiritual place, full of spirituality. The present phase is also necessary and indicative of a great spiritual upheaval to come. The burning desire of people to find the truth, although currently being kept in check, is there all the while, becoming deeper and more intensified with the restrictions on any outer expression. And once it breaks the barriers, the reaction will be tremendous. It will react with all the force that has been pent up. Could I pass the reading to Mahu now? Mahu, could you unmute and continue?
I'm going to read today. Maybe I could read now. Shall I go ahead? Hello?
Do you have something to read?
Well, yeah, I see the book. I have it. Yeah.
Yeah, do go
Okay.
ahead, please, Rosie.
Okay, Baba's plans were never fixed. Baba's plans were never fixed. As soon as his work was complete, he would leave the place on one pretext or another. Baba had originally gone to Cannes with plans to stay a full year, but on 7 October 1937, Baba shocked the group by announcing that he will be leaving Cannes to return to India within 3 weeks. No one expected him to leave so soon, and Muhammad Must had not even arrived, though he was already on the way by ship. To bring a God-intoxicated Must on an international journey from India to France was no small undertaking, but it was Baba's wish, and he once again made the seemingly impossible possible. In the first place, to get a person like Muhammad a passport was in itself a minor miracle, since it could not be procured without his signature. How would the authorities issue a passport to a man whom ordinary people would consider mad? The Ahmednagar city magistrate insisted Mohammed be brought to his office so that he could see him in person. Before their appointment, Sarosh took a tailor to Meherabad and had a suit made for the must. On 14th September, dressed in his new suit and wearing a pair of shoes and socks, Sarosh, Adi Sr., Pendu, and Baidu presented the must to the magistrate at the collector's office. The magistrate was unimpressed. "You brought me a mad person," he said. Sarosh tried to explain that Mohammed was not mad, but God intoxicated. The magistrate asked Mohammed a series of questions, such as, "What is your name? Where do you want to go?" Mohammed answered for a while, but then said, "Why have I come here?" The magistrate refused to sign the forms without a guarantee that Mohammed would not endanger anyone. Sarosh gave the guarantee, and the necessary documents for Mohammed's passport were completed and a passport issued.
The note
11
says,
days later, Sarosh drove Adi Sr., Baidu, and Mohammed to Bombay, where they faced yet more hurdles. Mohammed's mood was cross and cantankerous that day. As they went to board their ship, the customs officer refused to allow Mohammed to pass. Adi and Sarosh begged the officer, explaining that Mohammed was, quote, "a mental patient who was going to France for treatment," end quote. Finally, after prolonged arguments back and forth, the officer relented. Mohammed was cleared and they boarded the ship while Sarosh waited on the gateway. I need more words here. Waited on the gangway. The two, Mandali and Mohammed, were booked in one cabin. Before the ship sailed, Adi told Baidu to look after Mohammed while he went to check on their luggage. Baidu, in all the excitement of departure, thought there would be no harm if he went on deck for a moment to watch the proceedings. He left, but when he returned, he found that Mohammed too had left the cabin. Where had he gone? Mohammed had wanted to urinate and needed Baidu's help with the Western toilet, so he went in search of him. Frantic with worry, Adi Sr. and Baidu ran looking for the must. They found him on the top main deck. A crowd had formed around Mohammed after he created a commotion by relieving himself in the open on the deck. Women and children were present, and the captain was summoned. "Remove this man from my ship," he bellowed at Adi Sr. "Otherwise, I will call the police and make sure he is removed." I need more words. My word. While Baidu escorted Mohammed back to their cabin, Adi conferred privately with the captain in his office, apologizing profusely and again begging to permit Mohammed to travel. The captain agreed only after Adi promised to keep a close watch over the must at all times. And so their ship, the Strathard, with Mohammed aboard, sailed from Bombay for France on 25 September 1937. The first few days, Mohammed was quiet and well behaved. But then, for the remainder of the 2-week voyage, Mohammed proved a terrible nuisance. He would abuse or curse the other passengers to their face, fling lighted cigarettes at them, and spend much of his time hunched over, collecting litter off the deck of the ship. Shocked, if not frightened, the other passengers complained to the captain about him. Adi and Baidu were much harassed and embarrassed on account of his behavior. Finally, the only way Adi could keep control of Muhammad was to threaten that the police would come if he did not act properly. Responding like a child, Muhammad seemed afraid of the idea of the police coming after him. I need more words. At other times, Muhammad would lock himself in the cabin, and Adi would threaten to call the police if he did not come out. Again, Muhammad would comply. Norina and Elizabeth met Adi Sr., Baidu, and Muhammad at Marseille and drove them directly to Cannes, reaching there at 5 p.m. on 8 October. The Musk shed tears when he saw Norina and Elizabeth waiting on the quay. Baba was very happy that the Musk had come. He told Adi Sr., "You have accomplished a great work of mine by bringing Mohammed to Cannes." Adi Sr. stayed with Nilu and Jose Luis in a detached cottage at the back of the Mondele's villa. Mohammed and Baidu occupied a room over the garage of the villa. From the next day, Baba began sitting with him alone from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. and again from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. each day. He would bathe Mohammed, bring his food from the kitchen, feed him, and do his inner work with him. As soon as Mohammed arrived, Baba stopped most visitors coming to Cannes for interviews and spent the remaining weeks absorbed in his work with the Musk. Baidu was on call night and day to serve Mohammed, and the slightest oversight brought Baba's stern rebuke. Once, witnessing Baba's harsh treatment towards Baidu, the Westerners were taken aback at Baba's severity towards one of his closest disciples. Baba explained, I need more words here. Baba explained, my work is, can you lower it slightly so I can see where I am? Oh, I see, okay. My work is uppermost. Mohammed represents Germany. So you can imagine the significance of his coming here to France and the importance of my work with him at this point in time. Baba added, I have to be cruel to be kind. Baba also commented that Germany was experiencing mass psychosis under Hitler's leadership. As mentioned, Adolf Hitler was coming into full power, as was his ally Benito Mussolini in Italy, during the time that Baba was nearby in France. One visitor whom Baba did permit to stay in Cannes was Mercedes de Acosta from Hollywood, who arrived on 21 October 1937. One afternoon, Baba went for a drive with her and he decided to take Mohammed along. They drove in a convertible, and just as his chauffeur slowed down for the traffic in Nice, Mohammed began shouting at the top of his lungs. A policeman stopped the car and looked at Baba, asking what the trouble was. Baba put his hand to his mouth to indicate that he did not speak. I need more words. Okay. Mohammed started shouting louder and then began to sing at the top of his voice. At this point, Mercedes took it upon herself to explain the situation to the policeman, saying, "These gentlemen are from India. This gentleman, Baba, has taken a vow of silence, and the other is a mentally ill Hindu undergoing treatment here, but he is harmless." The policeman was wonderstruck at the odd characters. Shrugging his shoulders, he waved his hand and told them to be on their way. For the week that Mercedes was in Cannes, she found Baba in a playful mood. One day, he came into her room and noticed her black cape hanging in the closet and a Spanish hat. Baba put the hat on, draped himself in the cape, and started stepping in rhythm to a Spanish dance. He gracefully danced around the room from one side to the other, snapping his fingers in rhythm, and Mercedes marked time by clapping her hands. She began to laugh, and Baba beckoned her to dance with him. Mercedes recalled, "I was delighted to see Baba so gay and full of fun, but I hoped none of the women disciples would come in and catch us. This is what I loved about Baba. He was always unpredictable." Okay, there's a picture of Baba. And I need more words. Ever since leaving India, Jean Adriel felt estranged. In India, she had been ill and depressed, and on board the ship to France, she was again ill and feeling unkind toward everyone. The cabin she shared with her husband, Malcolm, was far away from Baba and the other women, and she hardly saw anyone during the voyage. Jean did not know, however, that Baba would visit her cabin at 3 a.m. to see how she was and to watch over her as she slept. In Cannes, Jean became more and more depressed until on the night of 9 October 1937, she left the house determined to die. Baba, being ever vigilant of his birds, noticed she was missing and sent a search party to bring her back. The next day, Baba took her head in his hands and looked into her eyes, asking, "You think I am cruel?" She could not prevent herself from saying what she felt. "You are cruel." Baba repeated what he had said earlier. "I must be temporarily cruel in order to be permanently kind." I like that. I'm repeating it. "I must be temporarily cruel in order to be permanently kind." Looking at her with compassion, he added, "The day will come when even the memory of this pain will be completely obliterated, but the all-consuming joy which will flood your soul." I'm going to repeat that too. I guess I don't. Okay, onward. Jean wept and said, "But Baba, the night is so long." Oh, wait a minute. I think we went too far now. Wait a minute. Okay. Okay. Kind of page up because we're beyond. Okay. The day will come when even the memory of this pain will be completely obliterated by the all-consuming joy which will flood your soul. That's Baba to Jean Adriel. Okay, next page. Jean wept and said, "But Baba, the night is so long." Baba smiled and spelled out, "But when dawn comes, you will see that everything you are bearing now would have been worth bearing 1,000 times. Baba explained, "I push you away, then I draw you close. Again, I push you off and draw you even closer. Now I push you far away, and the next time I draw you back to me. It will be to remain one with my universal self forever." Baba had said something similar to Gita 2 days before. A few of the Westerners were to return to India with Baba, but Gita was not one of them. About the apparent cruelty of separation for those being asked to remain behind, Baba explained, "I have to give you the experience of separation and its pinch and pain to intensify your love and bring you closer. It is necessary to be separate and to suffer after having the first experience of my love." As the time for Baba's departure from France was fast approaching, on Friday, 15th October 1937, he permitted Kaka, Nilu, Adi Sr., and Adi Jr. to leave by the morning train to spend a few days in Paris, where they could see some of the same sights he had shown the women Mandali. I need more words. During this period, Chanji's nephew, Nariman Jadachanji, was studying chemistry in Manchester, England, and he arrived in Caen to see Baba on the afternoon of the 17th. Nariman, 24, was not the type of person given to much talking or asking questions. From his first contact with the master, he had been sipping the nectar of Baba's silence in silence. Baba inquired how his studies were progressing, and after a 4-day stay, Nariman left for England via Paris. Chanji traveled to Paris with him and returned to Caen on the 25th. Baba sent Duncan to Paris with Jose Luis on the 17th, where Luis was probably handed over to the Spanish refugee camp there. Later, it was observed that after Luis was sent away, the political situation in Spain stabilized, and eventually most of the refugee children were returned home. Mabel Ryan was very ill with cancer and spent most of her time in bed while in Caen, being nursed by Mary Beckett. Baba would come to see her daily, knowing this was their last meeting. Margaret had returned to Caen, and she, Mabel, and Tom Sharpley also left on the 17th for London. Okay, I need more words. Duncan was instructed to return to London with them. Mabel expired 5 months later. On 25th October, Sam Cohen was sent to Mexico by Baba, and Nadine left for Zurich. 3 days later, Jean and Malcolm Schloss left for Paris by the morning bus. Alfredo and Consuelo Cides, who had come to Cannes the previous day to say goodbye to Baba, left the same afternoon. While leaving, Jean wept and said to Baba, "Thank you for all the joy and pain in my life I have had while with you." Baba replied, "Thank me only for the pain." Jean understood what Baba meant. Only while suffering do we grow in love, and through pain overcome our weaknesses and ego. Having come back from Paris, Adi Sr., Adi Jr., and Nilu left on 28 October for Marseille, where they boarded the Strasnaver for India. The next day, Mercedes de Acosta bid farewell to return to America. For some, this farewell to Baba in Cannes would be their last intimate contact. Baba would not make another trip to the West for 15 years until 1952. Some of the Westerners would never see him again. After Baba had announced that he would soon be returning to India, Rano began wondering if she would ever see him again. She knew Norina and Kitty were going back with him, but there was not a hint about anyone else. On one of the last days, Baba called her into his room and asked, "How would you like to come back to India with me?" "Would I?" she cried out. "But what will Nani say?" This time Nani has to say. "This time Nani has no say," Ranu declared. "Will she pay your passage?" "I know she won't refuse." "Don't worry," Baba assured her. "If Nani won't pay, then I'll pay your fare." When Baba had asked Ranu in Nasik how she liked Mehrabad, she had replied honestly, "Very nice, but not for me." Now she was only too willing to return to India with her beloved. With the onset of cool, damp autumn weather in Cannes, Baba's health noticeably suffered. On Sunday, 31st October 1937, one of the remaining Westerners asked Baba, "Why does a master fall ill and make use of medicine?" Baba explained, "The West differs from the East in its ideal of spiritual perfection. The West believes perfection to signify the possession and use of psychic powers." More words, please. A yogi can do all the jugglery by using psychic powers. He can abstain from food, go without sleep, leave the body at will, or stop his breathing, etc. Spiritually considered a simple, ordinary human, good man who works in the world selflessly for others is much better and stands higher than many yogis with all their occult powers of performing miracles, which are nothing but jugglery without any spiritual importance at all. Because whatever a yogi does is for his own individual self, and hence He is not selfless. He overcomes one illusion by creating another, which differs fundamentally from the teaching and work of a perfect master. A perfect master who has to take upon himself the burdens of the world in order to absorb them must necessarily have physical reactions and consequently must suffer physically like an ordinary human being. Krishna, Mohammed, and Jesus were perfect. By submitting themselves to the law of action and reaction, they established that law of karma and were selflessly and willingly subject to it. But in spite of subjecting themselves to this law, they stand above the law. They could, in a second, have cured themselves or rid themselves from actions and reactions. What then would be the meaning and purpose of action and reaction? Perfect masters absorb the dual effect of the universal illusion by taking humanity out of the illusion through liberating mankind from the bonds of action and reaction. The perfect master absorbs duality in his true existence in order to sublimate it. More words. Ramakrishna had cancer, and he could, in an instant, have cured it with his infinite powers. Jesus fainted on the cross several times, which he could have avoided, but it was a necessary demonstration for the good of humanity. I have abstained from fish, eggs, and meat, not for my benefit, but to create and impress upon humanity an example which later, when I speak, will become an established law. After final instructions for Nani and Elizabeth to come to India after 4 months, and directing Irene below to return to Switzerland with the dogs, Kippy and Canute, Baba left Cannes for Marseille early on Tuesday, 2nd November, 1937. Elizabeth drove him. The women Mandali and Kitty, Chanji, Kaka, Baidu, and Mohammed followed by train with Rano and Narina. In Marseille, they met up and stayed overnight at the Hotel Continental. In Marseille, Baba sent Narina out to a pharmacy to buy him some mineral water. The label on the bottle was in French, and when Narina returned with it, Baba asked Narina, who spoke French, to translate it. Baba indicated that this was the wrong kind of mineral water and sent Narina back to exchange it. She returned with a different bottle, and again, after listening to Rano translate the name and contents, Baba sent Narina back with it and asked her to bring something else. This happened 5 or 6 times. The pharmacist became annoyed and asked Narina, "Why don't you ask your party for the correct name in French? Surely, madam, if someone can read the label, he should be able to give you the correct name." Narina kept her poise. The man had no idea this was a lesson for Narina in swallowing her pride and anger and maintaining her self-control. Back at the hotel, Baba even remarked to Rano, "You don't really think I'm doing this for myself, do you?" A few of the Western lovers left behind in Cannes had come to Marseille to see Baba off as he boarded the TMS Circassia for Bombay at 12:30 p.m. on the afternoon of the 3rd and sailed 4 hours later. Age noted. This separation from Baba, after staying with him for 10 weeks, was most painful. Their hearts cried out when they recalled the different scenes and incidents in Baba's intimate company in Cannes. His humor, his seriousness, his taunts, his endearing ways, his jokes, and profound explanations were bittersweet recollections. The birds remembered how Baba played ping pong and charades with them in the evenings. And one particular occasion, he had portrayed Moses so well that they all were amazed by his acting ability. They remembered how well Baba blended in European society and dressed so handsomely in Western clothes. Remembering all this, they felt as if their hearts were breaking and leaving for some distant land. Every act Baba did had made their hearts open and imbibe great quantities of the wine of his love. His games, skits, jokes were all mediums of his work to attract them forever with his beauty. The voyage on the Circassia proved most comfortable as Baba's cabin had an attached toilet and bath. And the ship's crew was very respectful and saw to it that the women Mandali's privacy was undisturbed. It was the Circassia's maiden voyage, and the crew was especially courteous. During the voyage, Baba spent most of the time bathing and feeding Muhammad the Mas and being with the women Mandali with whom he would eat his meals. On the 12th, Baba allowed a Christian minister on board to meet him. The minister was reading Ram Landau's book, God is My Adventure, and pointed out a chapter about Baba in it. The following exchange then took place. The minister began by stating, Mohammedans say that Jesus was wrong in what he said about being the Son of God. Baba replied, do you believe Muhammad could ever speak like that about Jesus? So they say, who? Books. Ah, books. Did Muhammad write these? I don't know, but in Mohammedan literature, it is written like that. And there are many other allegations against Christianity. But people may say or write anything. How can you blame Muhammad for that? Because they are his followers. You are a follower of Jesus. Suppose, God forbid, you make some serious mistake. Or do something wrong. Some people would hold Jesus responsible for that because you are his follower and a minister. It is thus that masters and prophets are always misunderstood through misrepresentation of their teachings by their over-enthusiastic followers. Such statements about Jesus being in the wrong can never have been made by Muhammad. If he did, he wouldn't be a prophet. It is the disciples and followers who, after the death of the prophet present their teachings to the world according to their own impressions and understanding. These interpretations of the followers invariably vary, sometimes quite contrary to the spirit of their master's teachings. If a lecturer speaks today before a gathering of 500, and the same subject is repeated by the 500 listeners to others, there will be 500 different interpretations. Some never dreamed of it by the speaker. So, what about the teachings of masters like Jesus interpreted? Being in the wrong can never have been made by Muhammad. If he did, oh wait, no, I'm sorry, I got, okay, interpreted. So what about the teachings of masters like Jesus interpreted after him, perhaps 1,000 times through different interpreters in the past? The original thought is sometimes lost sight of or made irrelevant, but yet each clings to his own different interpretation as the original. That is why so many today hesitate to believe in the Bible and other such books whose interpretations do not appeal to them. There is more of the writers in the Bible than of Christ. Thus, it is that there are always quarrels between fanatic followers of different religions over words and explanations that the prophets never uttered, but were written in the Holy Scriptures by over-enthusiastic disciples and priests, which quite naturally creates a revolt in the minds of others. And more words, well. Can we scroll up?